on. So Scott and I were just chatting about the NHL and the move of the Coyotes to Salt Lake City and some other stuff. But now we're actually going to talk some real estate. So we have a few things I thought we should go over if you have time. And the first was that the village in Smiths Falls is for sale now, and I quite like it. And I thought I should at least show it to you. So I've got some slides to show if that's okay.
Yep.
And I'm going to show this, as we discussed before we started recording, to Jeff Moody, because I think he actually visited the site with me, or he's visited a number of these, storage and contractor yards places with me, and he loves the model too. So I'd like to show it to him afterwards. All right, so hang on a second. I'll share my screen here in a second. And yeah, here's some slides. So this is a client of mine. His name is Matt Woodworth, a coaching client of mine, and his wife, Michelle. Everybody calls him Woody. So if you hear me talking about Woody, it's Matt Woody Woodworth, if you know what I mean. So anyway, he bought this, I think a couple of years ago now, which I helped him with. And then he bought another business. That's called the Brick Painters, which is going gangbusters. So he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going to focus on my operating business. Can you help me sell the village?" And I said, "Sure, I like the model. I'll be happy to do that." So it's not on MLS at this time.
Bruce, I have to stop you for a second.
Sure.
When you say that his other business is the brick painting business, is it safe to assume he's the fellow that painted the building here in Port Hope?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. You put two and two together pretty quick there.
Small world.
Yeah, small world. All right. So this is a 6.5 acre site that has been cleaned up quite a bit by Matt and his wife Michelle. And I really like the contractor yards model, and of course RV parking, boat parking, equipment parking, storage, workshops, all that stuff. And I think you like it too. This is confidential and proprietary information, so we have to treat it that way. You'll get a copy of the recording, but again, it'll be unlisted, and the only people are going to watch it will be you, me, and Jeff Moody. So it's in Lanark County in Smith Falls. It's about 3 or 3.5 minutes to downtown Smith Falls. You could walk there, but you could drive there in 3 minutes. It's zoned highway commercial. The highway is quite busy, about 7,600 vehicles a day. And there is a storage building on the property. It's an old Quonset hut that's been cleaned up. It's over 4,000 square feet. And Woody put in a new electrical service, underground 200 amp service. This thing had power at one time, but the meter had been pulled and it was disconnected, and it was quite expensive to add that. And then he also bought fencing and the gate for this, but it's just lying on the site. It hasn't been erected yet.
So Bruce, when the traffic volume on that highway.
Yeah.
If you told me it was 20,000, I still wouldn't have a clue whether or not that's good, bad, or ugly.
So that's a great question. Years ago, I built a small retail plaza, about 10,000 square feet, on Dunrobin Road in Ottawa. Dunrobin is a tiny village, a few hundred people, and everybody said, "You're crazy." But it had traffic very similar to this. It's a little bit more now, but back then it was probably about 7,500 vehicles a day. So I built a 10,000 square foot plaza on a road with 7,500 vehicles a day. And that plaza was successful right out of the gate. We had a meat store in there, a grocery store, beer store, a LCBO, LCBO. We had a post office in there. We had a pizzeria in there and a chiropractor. And it was a very successful plaza until 2018. We had tornadoes hit Ottawa. It hit my house and it destroyed the mall.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not good.
I had buildings in Nepean. I had buildings in Dunrobin, and those are the two places that got hit. Now, how's that for bad luck?
How was your insurance?
They were actually pretty good.
Really? Good.
I mean, I lost money on it. I don't think in insurance you ever actually make money. I don't. But they were okay. I mean, whatever. But the plaza blew down. My house, I lost my roof and a bunch of other stuff. I had a lot of damage. It doesn't say on here whether it has well and septic. I mean, it is a rural property. I know there's a well there, but I'm not sure if he has a septic field. I just can't remember, and I got to check that. I apologize. I just don't remember. And I was looking at my slide deck just before we started, and I thought, oh my God, I forgot. So I'll have to ask Woody what the status is of that. I'll tell you about that.
The 200 amps electrical, Bruce.
Yeah.
Given the potential of the site, is that sufficient, or like
Yeah, it depends what you use it for. I think 200 amps for, as for a storage building or a workshop, it's probably enough with some capacity to spare. And if you're just parking equipment and contractor yards, generally speaking, you only give the contractor yard a 30 amp service, enough so that they can plug in their machinery over when it gets cold.
yeah.
And maybe you have a light somewhere that they plug in. It's not big electrical, but I could imagine some uses where it would not be enough and you might have to upgrade it.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, so here is I don't know if I can share. Hang on, I gotta stop sharing my screen. There's a way to do this so you can hear it. So hang on. I'm gonna show you a short video. I quite like what Woody has done. He's a good marketer. So I'm going to share the sound, and you'll be able to see this, and then I'll stop sharing afterwards. So we'll watch a little bit of this.
All about the Village workshops and storage solutions. Conveniently located only 3 minutes from downtown Smith Falls and serving Eastern Ontario, the Village is a family business that provides total end-to-end storage and workshop solutions for contractors, small businesses, and artisans, all in one great location. The Village's workshops and maker spaces are absolutely ideal for contractors who will enjoy the many benefits and peace of mind of having their equipment, inventory, and business operations in one single convenient location. And for artisans and creators who have outgrown their garage, living room, or basement and now need their own private space to ply their craft, store inventory, get more done, and easily meet with customers at a reputable business location. All of our workshops are secure, heated, well lit, and come with power and high-speed internet so your business doesn't have to skip a beat. And again, you can access your space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Contact us now for more information and to secure your spot in the Village.
So I thought that was pretty cute. I thought I'd show you. He's a good marketer. And I guess that's why Brick Painters is successful. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen one more time without the video, and I'll just show you a couple more things. Yeah, so this is really basically just a repeat of what he said earlier. I don't really need that slide. Here is a survey. So it's 6.5 acres here. Here's the main road. So this is County Road 43 or Highway 43 down here. Can you see my cursor moving back and forth?
No, I can't.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can. I can see the topography survey.
All right. So the area in yellow is where the land that Woody owns. It has a right of way here. So to access it, because there's a property in front, to access it, there's a right of way here, and then there's another one here.
Okay.
And here is the Quonset hut right here. And then, it's a pretty big piece of land. Like I said, about 6.5 acres.
Yeah, that's good size.
Yeah, it's a good size. This is what the Quonset hut looks like today, and you can see that this is the 1 acre that he's gravelled, and you can see that the rest of the site is kind of, it would have to be grubbed. Grubbed means trees removed and then gravelled, which is quite expensive to do. Just another aerial shot of it. You can see that he likes painting stuff, right?
Yeah. I can see that he fixed that Quonset hut up.
Oh yeah, he did. He did a good job on that. It has a pylon sign at the road where it says the storage solutions. Then here's just a few more photographs. I'll whip through these. He put in a new front door, and kind of a sliding barn door kind of thing. So you can access it. It's good signage on the building itself. And then inside the building, it's a storage building. It's about 4,100 square feet. I don't remember exactly what the height is here, but it's close to 30 feet high. And then it's got a bit of a loft, which you'll see better on the next slide or a couple of slides from now. It does have an old office here, and he just basically, what I wanted him to do, what he did do, I said, just you know, tear it back to the studs so people can see what the possibilities. So it does have an old office here. It has, going back here, it has a bit of a hall here where you can store stuff. And I think this building was used for 20 years to store golf carts. Like the local golf club, I think, owned this site, and they would store their golf carts here over the winter. This is just another shot of that's the office there. So I guess that was some sort of a window. There's the door. And I put in here a few case studies, some of which I think you've seen, and I'm going to just whip through them because I don't want to take up too much of your time. You're leaving tomorrow. So the model, as you know, is something I really like. So Longyards on Bank Street has been quite successful. It's full. It's about 9.6 acres, so bigger than this site. But this was one of the first ones in Canada, and it's been pretty successful. This is a house that was on the site, which has been renovated by the owner. And you'll see the picture. This is the young owner. His name's Chris Long, and I think you know the story. I helped him and his family. You know, I've been coaching him for years, and this was his first one. He's now got, I think, 3 of them, one in Ottawa and then 2 in the United States.
And so
yeah,
for this property, Bruce, what would you recommend in terms of creating a business plan? Like, because part of me is kind of like, you know what, franchises are nice from the perspective of their cookie cutter, their, you know, plug and play, way you go. But there's a downside, and it's a cost factor. And, you know, you got to pay out a chunk of money.
So because you are in the business you're in now, I was not going to suggest a franchise for you.
Okay.
I've gotten to know you quite well, and I like you, and I know you, the kind of person you are. You're very independent, and you want to chart your own course. I would not recommend a Longyards franchise. Some of my clients have Longyards franchises, by the way, but they are people who do not have your business experience. Like I've got a tech guy I coach in Miami, and he owns a Longyards franchise, and he needs something where everything is established for him. The layout, the marketing, the website, all of that stuff is there.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. It does simplify matters quite a bit.
Yep.
But, and I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I label it more the unsophisticated entrepreneur.
Yeah, I know. So that's something that we'll discuss a little bit more later on, especially if you buy the thing. We're going to have a lot of discussion on that. So this was the layout of Longyards. So this is Bank Street here in Ottawa. And, you know, he's got a road literally right down the middle of it. And then he's got the yards on either side. The industry actually, I think, got started in Phoenix. This is one of the guys I coach in Phoenix, Kyle Powell. And you can see he's got almost like a racetrack here. I don't know if you can see it on my screen. Okay.
Yep.
And all the yards are, you know, either interior yards or exterior yards. And, you know, he's been very successful with it. In the United States, they don't just do, you know, chain link fences, because crime in the United States is at a different level than we're expecting to see in small towns like Smith Falls or Port Hope, or even bigger towns like Ottawa. So they have masonry walls and barbed wire. You can see
right. Yeah.
And then here inside is, you know, this is what it kind of looks like in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy duty.
That's
so
pretty.
Yeah, you've got the perimeter, and then you have to secure everybody's own yard, everybody's space.
Lots of video, lots of security, for sure. That is, that is a must, I'm afraid. You know, I mean, it just, you have no idea. I mean, most Canadians have no idea what crime is like in the United States. You know, my wife and I, we go to Merida in Mexico for at least part of the winter every year. We like Merida. It's a very safe town, and it's in the capital of the Yucatan. It's inland, so it's not a beach town. It's not a college town. There are no gangs there. There are no cartels there. It's very safe. You know, it's not a party town, but you know, there are parts of Mexico which are not like that. And some of my American friends say, "Oh, you go to Mexico, you know, is it dangerous?" Well, it turns out that Merida is the second safest city in North America, second only to Quebec City.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, you know, it's rumored that it's so safe the cartel members send their families to live there. But the real point of that story is when I talk to my American clients and they say Mexico's, you know, scary, I said, well, wait, have you ever walked around? I have, in downtown Baltimore, Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, South Central LA. I mean, in Chicago on a long weekend in the summer, you'll have 80 shootings.
Yeah.
So I said, you know, so you do have to be more aware if you're doing business in the United States of security. This is a client of mine actually out in Alberta, who does, you know, he has contractor yards, but a big part of his model, and I think what you would do as well, is parking like this. This is angle parking for RVs, boats, trucks, all kinds of equipment. It's very profitable. It's one of the most profitable things you can do. By the time you grub an acre, take the trees off, and gravel it, it's probably $50,000 an acre. Okay, which is a lot of money. But on 43,560 square feet, which is what an acre is, you can park about 120 boats, RVs, cars, trucks, you know, something like that, about 120 vehicles, especially if you do it on angles like that. It's very efficient.
Right.
So if you take $120, and in Ottawa, you would get $85 a month for that. You know, so you say you had 120 spots and you get, you know, $85 a spot, and you multiply that by 12, you know, you can get about $120,000 a year from an acre of parking. And if it costs you, you know, $50,000 to grub it and to gravel it, it's a
Good return.
it's a great return. It's one of the most profitable things you can do with land. So if you bought this, you know, Woody didn't do it, but the fencing of the gate is there. You'd put the fencing up, you'd put some security on it, and you would start renting out individual spots, right? I mean, parking spots. It's such. Now in Smith Falls, you might not get $85 a month. You might get $55 a month. But even at $55 a month on each acre, you'd do very well. All right, so this is what Paul Randhawa has done in Alberta. And then I think Jeff and I, Jeff Moody and I, when we did a tour, because he likes the industry as well, we went to see Just the Spot, which is another storage place, which I helped one of my clients buy and develop. It's also in Ottawa, and it's been very successful. This is the original site plan for Just the Spot. So here's the main road. It's called Barnsdale Road. It has a house and an office up here in the corner, and then it had room for about 22 storage buildings. But I'm going to tell you, only one storage building was ever built. And why is that? Because the rest of it is contractor yards and parking for boats and RVs and trucks.
Which is great because his return is much better.
You know, I just had one of my clients call me. He has a storage yard, and he told me that he's building his either his third or his fourth storage building, and he's so fed up with the bureaucracy and the cost of building these buildings. It's not the cost of the building itself. That's nothing. It's on each building, he has to pay the city of Ottawa $55,000 in development charges. This is for a 2,000 square foot building. You know, I mean, it's really obscene. And so guess what? I'm going to go out and meet with him, and we're going to look at the balance of his property. And what do you think he's going to do with it? He's not going to build any more buildings. I can tell you that. He'll turn it into the contractor yards and parking. So this is just the spot. So there's a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment up here, and then there's a nice office on the ground floor. And then on the next slide, you can see there's the house and the office over here on the left. And that's the one building, it's 4,000 square feet, that was built on the site. And Peter, who owns it now, Peter Hodowitz, is never building another building. He's graveling the entire site. It's pretty big. It's about 18 acres. He's right up down to the last 6 acres. He's grubbing it and graveling it now. And you know, he makes a ton of money doing this. I mean, it's really something I should have done, you know, 10 or 11 years ago when I first, you know, started coaching people. And so Peter called me up. I may have told you the story, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but it's for the record anyway. So Peter calls me up, I guess it must be 2 years ago now. And, you know, I says, well, I'm making about $25,000 a month on this property that you bought. That's after paying for everything, including his mortgage. And I said, wow, that's great, Peter. And how many hours a day are you working or whatever? And he said, maximum is about 4 hours a day.
Right.
So, and he runs it, you know, basically, he runs a very good ship. He says I can run it from my cell phone. So that's pretty cool. And there's another Woody and Michelle video. I'm not going to show you that one.
Yeah.
Let me see what. Sorry, I thought I had some other stuff to show you. Yeah.
So Woody cleared an acre.
Yes, he
and
did.
then he graveled it in and around his Quonset hut.
Yep.
And then he discovered probably in and around that same time period that he either bought another business or just decided that he didn't have the interest in pursuing this.
I think mostly because he bought the brick painter's business.
Okay.
And you know, which has been going gangbusters for him. And so he just ran out of steam. Like he didn't even put the fencing up. I said, what? You didn't put the fencing up. You bought all the fencing and the gates and you didn't put them up. No. So I have a few more slides to show you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So here are some of the work he did. Here you can see some of the trenching he had to do to bring the electrical in. So it is underground and installed. This is just another shot of what the Quonset hut looks like.
So Bruce, that Quonset hut,
yeah,
you would want that so you could obviously work in it 12 months of the year. So you would have to insulate it and break it up, obviously.
Well, you know, I don't know what you would do with it. You remember I think I showed you the Barndominium at one point, right? My old barn.
I think you did, but I can't recall with certain.
I'll boot up some slides if I can find them.
You moved it? Didn't you buy it and move it?
I did. Well, I didn't buy it. I mean, the guy was going to tear it down, and
right.
I just said, look, I'll come and dismantle it and rehabilitate it on my property. But I'll show you what I did with it.
Like, I don't know if you would use that Quonset hut for heated storage, or like, part of me is just like, you know, maybe it was better just to tear it down.
Oh, I wouldn't tear it down. I think it has value.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, somebody would just use it for storage. I mean, you know, like you could store golf carts in there. That was done for 20 years. I mean, it's actually better than you might think. But let me see if I can find a few slides for. Yeah, this probably will help. Okay. See if I've got anything here. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I don't really have much in the way of slides, but I'll show you the old Barndominium. And so I would never tear it down. I think it has value. Let's see if I've got a outside shot. Yeah, all right, let's just show this. So what this is the Barndominium. So this is the barn that was on another property. I dismantled it and reassembled it here, and I think I've got about 8 workshops now in there.
Yeah,
and people just love it. So that you can see it.
Is it heated and insulated? And
yeah, I'll show you. So this is the Barndominium, and these slides are, you're going to see some some of my clients wanted storage lockers, so I bought some of these, which you'll see how they assemble them. I bought these from Metalcore. They just come onto your site and they assemble them for you right on site. They're portable. You can move them around.
Different from the ones that you talked to me about before. The ones, I think the other ones came from overseas or something.
Yeah. Some of the other ones came from Turkey. These ones come from Toronto. But I'm just, hang on a second. I'll get out of this too. Oops, hang on. I'll show you the inside if I could. There's a couple of slides in here. It's not really the best, but there are a couple of slides what it looks like inside. Okay, yeah, this will help. So inside the Barndominium, I used spray foam insulation. I put a couple of overhead doors in. You can see over here on the right-hand side, these are doors that go into individual workshops in the barn. This is a shed that is also insulated, heated. There's the only cooling you get in places like this is you open the door and get yourself a fan, right? There's no air conditioning, there's just heating.
Yeah.
And here's a shot of us when we were building these workshops. The workshops are, the smallest ones are 200 square feet. Then we've got some that are 1,000 square feet, some that are 800 square feet. And these are the containers that I bought from Turkey.
So you would have had to get an architect, an engineer.
So, I mean, I got a building permit obviously for the barn. But when I did the workshops, I just put them in.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this is a barn. I mean, nobody gives a rat's behind about what we're doing in there, but it's been a very success. You won't believe it. I make $10,000 a month out of this building. Nobody would believe me if I told them that, but I do with some of the storage and parking, you know, that I.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the income on it 4 or 5 years ago was zero, right? And I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I just have some storage containers, workshops, some storage containers outside, some inside, and have some parking there. It's a real.
Okay.
Model. But can you see the spray foam insulation?
Yeah, I can see the picture you got there, but I don't even see the spray foam.
Well,
It just looks like wood.
Yeah, well, the spray foam insulation is this yellow stuff that you see.
Okay, yeah.
And by the way, it is a fire retardant. You could take a little chunk of the spray foam and put the lighter to it, and it will actually light, but it'll go out.
Okay.
So it is considered, fire. I don't want to call anything fireproof because I think this place would burn to the ground if you really worked at it. But it's pretty good.
What did that cost you?
Well, I did that a few years ago now, and that was about 20 grand. All right. These containers are fantastic. I don't want to say anything is mouse proof because mice are quite resourceful, but they're stainless steel and they're pretty much, we haven't had problems with mice, right? But we also have 2 employees that work for food. They're called cats.
Right. Yeah.
So I have 2 cats that live in the barn. They're barn cats. We feed them obviously and take care of them. But there are no mice.
How far is this barn from where you live?
It takes me about a half an hour to get there.
Okay, that's pretty close.
It's pretty close, yeah. Anyway, let's just go back. So what Woody is looking for the property is he asked me to sell it. It's a private sale right now. He asked me to sell it for $475,000. It's 6.5 acres. And you know, what I would probably do with the Quonset hut is I would probably just rent it to one company for storage.
Right.
You know,
keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Don't spend a lot of money on it. The one thing I would do with it, which I wanted Woody to do, but he just lost interest, right? He started making so much money with brick painters. He said, Bruce, you're going to sell this for me. So I said, okay.
Put an office in?
You beat me to it. So that office, I think, actually was properly insulated. So I would spray foam insulate that. I would put good lights in there so somebody could have a little office in there and they could store whatever they need to store there. And I would do that.
Right.
So what I think you would do if you bought it is you would put up the gate and the fencing, you would add some outdoor lighting. Maybe it's already there, I don't remember. But anyway, you need outdoor lighting. You need obviously video security. You put the gate and the fence up. With that Quonset hut, I think you're going to get $3,000 or $4,000 a month, just somebody who needs storage.
From one customer.
I would just do that. One customer who he or she wants an office. So maybe they, I do have, believe it or not, I do have clients who have uninsulated barns like this where they have a heated office. Obviously, you can't work when it's -20, but they have a heated office. But their work area, if they need heating, they have what do they call those things? They're torpedoes with heat coming out of them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So believe it or not, I have one company. I think I even have some pictures. Hang on, let me just show you that. Hang on. I think I have some pictures of one company that does this called Park Yards. And let's see if I've got those. Yeah, I've got some here. Yeah. So these guys, these are young guys here who are incredibly successful. This is on Moody Drive. And I think Jeff saw this as well when we did our tour. So what they do is they have, they rent out yards. Their yards are bigger, like Chris Long and Longyards. They'll do yards as small as 50 feet by 100, so 5,000 square feet. So quite small.
Right.
These guys here, their minimum yards are half an acre to an acre, right? So they're not interested in doing the little stuff. But on each one of their yards that they rent, they put like these coverall buildings up. And they buy these from China. That building that you're seeing there, that coverall building, is about $45,000. It comes as a kit. They buy 15 or 20 of them at a time. They ship them from China to Canada. They put them up themselves. They've got their own erection crews. And believe it or not, they'll rent an acre with a coverall building like this for $7,000 a month.
Right.
It's fantastic. I just have a few more pictures I'll show you. Now, this is one of the owners. They're young guys. I mean, I don't think Lucas is out of his 20s now. He bought 106 acres with his brother and his partner for $5.5 million.
That's ballsy.
Oh, these guys are very successful.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's this is the early days of Park Yards, and you can see they're putting up these Quonset huts. Sorry, they're not Quonset huts; they're coverall buildings. But surprisingly, at least to me, you can see how they do it, right? They anchor these things, and then the cloth goes over top. But it was surprising to me. They're called torpedoes. I think they're actually called torpedoes. They'll come in the morning, turn their torpedoes on, and warm up these. There's zero insulation. They'll warm up these buildings to 55 to 60 degrees so they can work in them.
Right. Oh, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, he's been very successful with it. Something else too that I told Lucas would happen almost right away, and it will happen too if you buy this site or another one like it. People will come to you and say, "Would you mind if I brought a trailer on site and some of my staff will live on site?"
Right.
And you're really not supposed to do that, but I can tell you that contractors, they're very independent people, and maybe even if you didn't give them permission, you might find they're doing it anyway.
Yeah. So work with them instead of against them.
I think so. So there is a little bit of an edginess to this business, but the good news about the business that I like a lot, Scott, is that industrial companies tend to pay their bills and they don't complain much.
I guess the other thing too is you're not talking about residential lease agreements.
No. Oh God.
You're basically like, you don't pay, then you don't get the combination to get the gate opened up for you type thing.
Exactly. No, also, by the way, I do have people who at the Barndominium who have parked have parking agreements with me, and I know some of them have parked tiny homes on the site.
Right.
Are living in them. I don't want to know anything about it. I just have a parking agreement.
Yeah.
So I know I have, I think, 4 of them on the site. I rent them a parking space. I charge them, I think, $530 a month plus HST. It's just a parking agreement, but I'm pretty sure that I have 4 people living on site now. I don't care, but I can't. And if I ever get called to task by the city, I'll just say, well, I have parking agreements. I got equipment parked there. I got storage parked there. I got, which is quite legal, and they're just parking their RVs or homemade RVs, whatever they are. And that's all I know. If they're living in it, you know, take it up with them, you know. But
Yeah.
because it's not a residential agreement, they have, you know, they don't have any holdover rights.
It's funny, you know, I still, you know, chat with my dad once in a while about business, not very often because he he's still a retailer through and through. So when you're out of it and you're not involved with it a lot, I think you have more appetite to talk about it, maybe. So when I meet up with them, I unfortunately, and it's probably the same way he was with me when I was younger. I get tired of the conversation. But long story short, I said to him, I do ask for his feedback once in a while, but I try to be careful because he's old fashioned. He's very conservative, but at the same time, he took a huge risk because he bought his own land and built his own store without law. So I got to give him huge kudos for that. But I sent him the village a pamphlet or the presentation, and you can almost guess what his response was.
No, I can't.
No, okay. Well, he replied back to me, and this is my dad probably being more of a protective father than a business person. He said, "Scott, I've never met an honest contractor."
Really?
Yeah, he says, "You're an honest guy. You do not want to get into business with contractors." But at the same time, if I had presented any of the properties to him that I've purchased, he would have told me not to buy any of them.
Wow.
Just because I just think that's how he operates. That's his, you know, that's maybe just him being a protective father. But anyways, yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. Well, I mean, you know, if your family doesn't want you to do it, that's a pretty big negative.
Well, I don't really, honestly though, I don't include them in my business decisions because I find like if I had, I'd be in the same spot I was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So you got to chart your own path, and I'm comfortable doing that for sure.
I get that, but you know, it
Yeah.
is nice to have your family on side. You know, like I'm sensitive. You know, I don't know if you know that about me, but I'm sensitive to criticism. And you know, when I was the owner of the hockey team, Scott, and people would you know, write bad things about the team and me. You know,
Yeah.
it hurts. You know, and so if my wife or my brother, you know, if they're very negative about something, it does affect me, but only for a couple of days. And then I'll ask myself, no, it's true, only for a couple of days. And then I'll ask myself, well, wait, does this make sense? And if it does, I'll do it anyway. But I will at least consider criticism just to make sure that, you know, I've thought through what I'm doing and hopefully give myself a chance to be successful. So I respect that. If your dad says don't do it, but you do it, that's fine. But it would be nice to have your family on side.
Yeah, I think they're just always looking out for you to save money, and they're old fashioned, right? Like they're the ones that would say just invest your money, and geez, you know, does it ever compound?
Well, I think, you know, if you think about what happened with Chris Long, you know, he bought his 9.6 acres. I helped him with that for $475,000, very similar to what we're talking about here. And then he spent 1.2 or $1.3 million developing it, you know, graveling it, fixing up the house and all the other stuff. And then, you know, about 4 years after he bought it, so he had about 1.6 or 1.7 million into it, and he got an appraisal of 3.5 million because the income was so strong.
Yeah.
And he calls me up, super excited. He said, "Can you imagine me, Bruce, a carpenter? You know, he was a young man, still is. You know, being a millionaire." I said, "Yeah, I can. I mean, that's why you bought it, right?" So, you know, if he were to sell it today, which he wouldn't, but if he were to sell it today, he'd probably get 4.5 million for it.
Yeah.
Now, Peter Hodowitz, who bought just the spot, he paid, I think, 1.1 or 1.2 million. I think it was 1.2 million for that. And he's put about $800,000 into it just to grub the land and put gravel down. And you know, he was asked what he would sell it for, and he said, "Yeah, I would sell it, $10 million."
Yeah.
So that's kind of why, you know, now, you know, those are two success stories. But Peter doesn't want to sell it, and Chris doesn't really want to sell it. Why should they? They make money doing it, and they just want to hold on to it. So it's not really something that is very difficult to run once it's set up. I mean, I'm sure Peter Hodowitz put in 70 hours a week while he was setting the damn thing up. You know, he bought it and then he developed it. But now, you know, like I said, he spends about 4 hours a day max on operations, and he can operate it from, you know, because he's an adventurer. He can be in Cabo, Mexico, you know, kite surfing and operate it. So I like the business. And to me, what I would do if you bought it, the first thing that you and I would do is we would find somebody who just wanted that storage building, and you know, so hopefully we can find somebody who wants the storage building for $3,000 or $4,000 a month, and maybe have some parking as well. And then we would fill up the rest of that 1 acre with folks who need either a yard or they want a yard or just some parking spaces to put their boat or their RV or whatever. And then once you've got 1 acre full and the storage building leased, then you figure out what to do with the other 5.5 acres.
Right. So Smith Falls, I did a little bit of research on Smith Falls, and I'm sure you're pretty up to speed with the community as well. And I noticed that they do have a lot of self-storage facilities. I didn't notice or I didn't clue into if they had a lot going on in terms of RV rental or yards per se, but I was actually blown away with the amount of self-storage. Like, it's probably about the same size as Port Hope in terms, like the community is. It's about 10,000 people, I think.
I think Port Hope is bigger. I think Port Hope has 15,000, and Smith Falls, I think, is 10 or 11,000.
Yeah. And their self-storage, I mean, it's dictated, I guess, by market research.
Yep.
You would think somewhat.
Yep.
I hope it is, or those guys are in trouble. But they have a ton of self-storage in Smith Falls.
So one of my clients owns Prolog Storage in Smith Falls.
Yeah.
And they are completely full, and they're expanding at a fantastic rate. And I have another client in Smith Falls, also in the mini storage business, who just added another. Hello. Who's that pretty young woman there?
Here, come over, say hello.
Yeah. So and I coach another person in Smith Falls who has her own storage business doing very well, and she added, I think, another 40 or 50 units last year. So they're doing very, very well. But I don't think you would do that. I think what you would do, you know, what I would do with it, if I could afford it right now, I would buy it myself, because I really like the business. Is, like I said, you would have storage, but not mini storage, parking, contractor yards. And the other thing that I think you would do is you would add those little workshops that I like so much. You know, you remember the one I showed you that I developed for my daughter. You remember that one, right?
Yeah. So you would just take an acre of property or whatever, and you would just throw like 5 or 10 of them down. And
exactly, because they're also very profitable and they're easy to do, right? Like, and guess who is in Smith Falls? North Country Sheds, that I buy my sheds from, right?
Yeah, yeah,
they're right there. Like they're literally around the corner. And so the other thing I think we would do is, if you bought it, is we would do a smaller yard. We do a couple of smaller yards, maybe like Chris Long would do, 50 by 100, and you'd put 2 workshops in there.
Right.
Because those, I mean, like, you know, you've gone through the numbers yourself, and you're getting better at those spreadsheets, by the way. So, you know, a workshop that you can rent for $600 or $700 a month that costs you $10,000 or $12,000 from North Country Sheds, plus, you know, some cost to make it year round. The one that I did for my daughter and I bought another one just recently. By the time I fitted them all up, and I did a very nice job on them, it was about 28 grand, and I got $700 a month for it. So that's pretty good plus power.
Right.
Works out to about a 14% cap rate. But the cap rate from just parking, boats and RVs and stuff like that, it is probably quite a bit higher. But the reason that you would do some workshops is to have a diversity of use. And the other thing that I would do is, if somebody comes along, as we said about 15 or 20 minutes ago now, if somebody comes along and they said, I'm going to park a tiny house in my yard, and I'm going to live on site and work on site, I would probably agree to that, even though I checked the zoning. I'm pretty sure the zoning says accessory residential is legal. But still, I would just do a parking agreement, because having one or two people live on site is fantastic for security.
Right. Right.
Like, I've got 4 people now living in 4, and I'm adding a 5th who will be living there. And we don't have any vandalism or theft.
Do you think that the geography piece is going to be an issue for me?
I do. One of the things that I think you would do is, one of your first clients would be your property manager. So, for example, one of my clients in Miami is opening a Longyards in Abilene, Texas. All right. So he lives in Miami, and from Miami to Abilene, Texas is a long way. Right. A lot further than Port Hope. How long does it take to get from Port Hope to Smith Falls?
I Google mapped it. I thought it was about 2 hours.
I think so. So that's not impossible, but it's a long way to go, to open up a lockbox. So, so one of the things that Chris O'Connell, who's my client in Miami, is one of his first clients will also be his property manager. So typically, what you would do is, say you rented that storage building with the office and some parking for $4,000 a month. You would say to that person, look, I'm going to give you $600 a month just to be my eyes and ears on the property. Because that's $600 a month that you would deduct from his rent, or, you just trade checks or whatever. That would be the best $600 a month you ever spend.
Right.
Because it would say, like, I have buildings that I own, like I have a 12-unit building in Belleville, and I rent one of my suites to a very nice middle-aged man by the name of Tim, and all the other people in the micro suites are paying $1,600 a month plus heat, electricity, and water. And but I deduct $400, or let him deduct $400 from his rent, because he's my on-site superintendent. And he frankly, he doesn't have to do much for that $400. Occasionally somebody forgets their combination, for their lock, or a light is out or something like that. So he might put in 3 hours a month, so he's getting a really good hourly rate, except once in a while there's a problem and I need somebody, and Tim's the guy.
You have a contract with him?
I do.
Like a written agreement on what his responsibilities are, and yeah.
I have a very good contract on the site superintendent, and that would be the first thing we would look for. Somebody responsible. Tim is very, very responsible. And so we have a proper lease with him, but we also have a contract as site superintendent. And his duties include things like, if there's, God forbid, there's ever a fire, he is the last person out of the building. He has to make sure everybody's gone before he leaves the building. And he takes those things seriously. So you have, as a landlord, you want to, obviously, safety is important. You want to make sure that you're duly diligent. So this is a downtown building, and, downtown has people who are homeless, people who are drug addicts, every downtown, I think, these days is plagued with that. And so Tim's job is make sure the outside lights are on, the outside security is working, and if there's a fire or something, other catastrophe, he's the last person out. So I have a good agreement, which I would share with you, of course.
How do you know that there's an appetite in Smith Falls for, I guess because the property, you're going to chop it up, you're going to diversify it, so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. So you don't need necessarily a community with a bunch of snowbirds.
But it is a risk. Your dad is right. There is risk involved here. With my barn building, my wife, because it was empty, right? My wife suggested we just use it for storage. I said, fine. So we did some advertising on Kijiji and other places. But there's so much mini storage in Ottawa that we didn't get, I think we tried to lease it for 6 months. We didn't get a single bite.
Yeah.
So I said, well, my wife, her name is Dawn. I said, Dawn, that's not going to work. What else? You got any other ideas? She said, no, not really. I said, well, I have an idea, let's divide it up into workshops. And she said, you think that'll work? I said, I don't know. But I put some ads on Kijiji, and I got one lead right away, and they rented the first workshop. And then within about another 6 weeks, I had all 8 of them rented. So it's been fantastic, and it's a wonderful model. So, and I think I told you about what happened in Picton, Ontario.
You may have, but I can't recall the story.
All right. Well, I may not have, but I'll show you some pictures. You're going to freak out. What happened in Picton? And Picton's smaller than Smith Falls, and it's about 4,000 or 5,000 people, so it's pretty small. But I'll show you what happened with the Picton Airbase.
Picton, Prince Edward County.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, listen, I should show you this. Oh no, it's the wrong one. Sorry, hang on. I'm getting distracted here. Yeah, this is an incredible story.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Because my father-in-law, before he passed, he would go down there for races.
Oh, wow. So
they would, I guess, just rent part of the airfield for the day.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the airbase. So
Yeah.
this was bought by a client of mine from Toronto. They bought 70 acres, the old airbase, for like $450,000. It's up on the plateau, and it was just sitting there empty. It had about 50 of these little buildings that you could see here on the screen. They had about 50 of these buildings, and this was in the early days of this workshop model. And so I said to them, look, let's see if we can rent these as workshops. And they said, what, are you crazy? I said, well, what else are you going to do? They just bought it. I mean, they're Toronto, they had lots of money. So out of the 50 or so buildings, about 40 of them were actually usable. The other 10, they weren't safe, right? So they had about 40 buildings. And so these buildings are typically, the smaller ones are about 800 square feet. They rented all 40 of them. This one here, probably too small on the screen to see, but this one is a yoga studio. So this one is a yoga studio. The next one, this is Maggie's Gone to Pot. This is not cannabis. This is pottery. So this one on the next slide went to this guy. He built a little museum, a little war museum that he does school tours, and then he does like, Fright Fest in September, October. I mean, he's quite imaginative. And so in a town of about 4,000 people, they rented 40 workshops. And listen to this, they had electricity, but they had no water, and they didn't even have bathrooms. If you wanted a bathroom, you had to get one of those porta potties. And the rents weren't very much, but they rented 40 of them. Average rent was about $350 a month. So they had 40 of the damn things times 350 times 12. They ended up with about 170,000. Sorry, 40 buildings times 350 times 12. Yeah, they ended up with about $170,000 a year of gross income, almost right away. And they spent pretty much $0, on the property. So they bought it for $450,000. They rented these things. And now, if I were to show you the plan that they have now for the airbase, it's like they're developing a whole community up there, some residential components. It's in the tens of millions of dollars of investment. But just as if it was just you and me without having a lot of money invested, I don't know what their cap rate was on it, but probably more than 30%.
Yeah, and that's cheap. I mean, they're renting those houses for peanuts.
But what was amazing to me is how many entrepreneurs there were in a town of 4,000 people. So in a town of like Port Hope with 15,000, or a town like Smith Falls, that's the market I want you to go after, right? Um, and that's the market. If I had in Dunrobin, where my barn is, if I had a set of 8 workshops, I had 40, they'd all be rented.
Right.
And Dunrobin is a lot smaller than Smith Falls or Picton even. I mean, I think there's maybe 1,000 people living in the village.
What about the population growth?
In Smith Falls?
Yeah, just kind of thinking about just what's that fellow's name that writes all those books, the acre method or whatever it's called, where one of your prerequisites is you don't want to invest in a community where the population's not growing, and I think I think Hershey left Smith Falls and then they're back now, I think, and
yeah. So I'm just looking online here, and I mean the 2 minutes of research here that I've done. Let's see.
I need to do obviously more research. I'll have to look into some of those numbers. How would you tackle the finance piece? Would you simply put 20% down, secure someone to rent that barn to kind of keep that part of your investment afloat, and then start investing capital?
So I just on the population thing here. So in 2016, there were 8,800 people living in Smith Falls, and 5 years later, it was 9,254. So there is some population growth, about 5.4% increase. So I think Smith Falls is actually doing a little better than it was. I think it's doing a little better. So
Okay.
it is growing. It's not growing as fast as how fast is Port Hope growing?
It's actually growing pretty quickly now because we've got a bunch of growth happening at the West End. Mason Homes and a couple of other builders have been really busy for the last, I would say, half a dozen years.
Yeah.
Seem to like a lot of smaller communities, I guess, during COVID, we had a lot of Toronto folk come and move into our area. So
believe it or not, Smith Falls is, at least according to this, is growing a little faster than Port Hope.
Yeah.
Over that period, 2016 to 2021, Smith Falls grew at just over 5%, and Port Hope grew just over 3%.
Right.
So both places are growing, which is good. So what was the question you asked me? I lost my train of thought there.
Just because that's kind of how I'm built from like a risk perspective. Like, how would you tackle the property? Like, would you just put down 20% and then get someone into that building?
I think you would put down 35%.
Yeah.
And have a mortgage for the rest. And I think that in terms of investment, I think he would do a few things. One, you would erect all the fencing. I mean, it makes no sense to have all the fencing outside and it's not put. So you put up the fencing in the gate. So that would cost you a few $1,000s. I think you would finish the office, right? So because you have electricity there, you can spray foam insulate it, create a little office that wouldn't be very expensive to do, and then rent that with the building. And then I probably would buy at least 1 or 2, probably 2 workshops from North Country Sheds and create 2 smaller yards. So I think you would probably put $50,000 into the property right away, just to get it ready for sale, not for sale, for lease, right?
Yeah.
And so that wouldn't necessarily be, that wouldn't be an excessive amount of money, and I don't think the risk would be very high. I mean, I think you will make more money with this property than you would buying some of the residential properties that you and I've looked at together.
Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do, as you know, is create another decent revenue stream.
So I think on 6.5 acres, if you have lots of boat and RV and truck parking, and you have some workshops, and you have some contractor yards, and you have a little bit of storage, I think you're going to have a very good income stream from this property. It might take you 4 years, but I think you will be very successful with it.
Right.
And you know, you're not spending, you know, $751,000 to buy a bungalow in Port Hope.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that was wrong.
No, I got it. Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, I'll be honest with you, owning 6 acres of property for me is much more exciting than buying a house. The possibilities of it.
I do think so. I would, you know, I go to Florida, but you know, I don't want to put any pressure on you because, you know, I'm your coach, and hopefully we're friends too. I feel that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for you, so I don't want to put any pressure on you. But this property will sell. And you know, I while we were talking, I got a call from somebody who's interested in this property. That's again, there's no pressure on you at all, Scott. I mean, and if you don't want it, don't worry about it because it's going to sell. I'm not worried about it. I want to get Woody out of it because he's going to put more money into brick painters, and that's fine. I understand that. That's his priority now. But so don't worry about this property. If you don't want it, you're not hurting my feelings at all. You just say so. But it is something that I think you should consider. It's you know, that one that you sent me, that's a little tiny thing, a strip of land, and it's got about a third of it is
for 600,000.
Yeah. Was it 600,000 they wanted?
Yeah, we used to be 649. They dropped it by 50.
You know, to me, this is better, especially initially it'd be a hell of a lot of work, but once you have these businesses set up, you know, it's a few hours a day at the most, and you could run it from your phone. And like I said, with a site superintendent, the way I do it, you know, the number of times you'd have to make a trek to Smith Falls would be reasonably small, maybe once a month or once every 2 months.
Right.
Initially, you'd be there every couple of days because you'd be, you know, on site making sure that everything is getting done according to your plan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But once you have it set up, I know that Chris Long spends very little time running his 3 yards, very little time, and Peter I know is very little time, and I know Kyle in Arizona, he you know, Arizona summers are like Canadian winters. People in Arizona hate their summers. It's 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So what Kyle does is he goes to Minnesota for his summers. He likes to hunt and fish, and he has a cottage up there. You know, so Minnesota's a lot cooler in the summer than Arizona.
Yeah.
So you know, he can run his business. He's away for 3.5 months every summer.
Yeah, sounds nice.
It is nice. And Kyle has 3 yards in the Phoenix area, and he's not going to have any more. And he makes about $40,000 US a month after paying all his bills. So that's what he does. And then he goes every summer to Minnesota to hunt and fish. So I really do like it. I think it is something that you should look at. And what I was going to suggest is that when you come back from Florida, if you're interested, that you and Jeff, because Jeff should look at it, and I would meet you in Smith Falls, and we'd have a look together.
Okay.
But go to Florida and have some fun.
Yep.
Who are you going to cheer for between the Panthers and the Lightning?
Oh, definitely the Panthers.
Me too.
Yeah, they had a great run last year. They fell down in the finals. Obviously, I think they were pretty banged up.
They were banged up.
But I think they're a better team this year. I think they've got a better chance. They're a little bit more experience.
So you know that Tampa Bay Lightning and the Ottawa Senators came into the league at the same time?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So, you know, Phil Esposito was fronting the Tampa bid, and Bruce Firestone was the Ottawa bid. And right now, all of my friends in Tampa, including Phil, every time Tampa wins another Stanley Cup, they call me up or they email me and say, right now they're saying Tampa 3, Ottawa 0.
Yeah.
And I hate them. So I don't really hate them, obviously, but I'm jealous. And Tampa has 3 Stanley Cups and Ottawa has none.
Yeah. Well, they've really done phenomenal. I mean, like they seem like they're in the playoffs every year.
They're a phenomenal organization, and I take my hat off to them. Have a
Yeah.
great time in Florida, and reach out to me when you're back.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
this
Bruce.
will be on YouTube in about an hour.
Okay.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.